Our next speaker is Mitch, who's a personal friend of mine, an amazing dude who has been thinking about technology and about the social implications of it for as long as I've known him and much, much before. He's the chairman of the board of directors of the Canadian Marketing Association and the former board member at the Interactive Advertising Bureau of Canada. He's been involved with the content committee for both shop.org and the Web Analytics Association, is on the advisory council for many businesses. He's also the president of a digital agency called Twist Image, which was founded here in the city, an amazing agency that works with all kinds of large brands. And he has shared the stage with a former president of the United States, with Richard Branson, Malcolm Gladwell, and Anthony Robbins, and more. His new ideas revolve around the concept of rebooting your business and thinking about your business as if it were invented today, under the moniker of Control-Alt-Delete. Please welcome to the stage with a warm welcome, Mitch Joel.
That's funny. Thank you. The best accolade is that I'm friends with Julian. That's the coolest thing I have. How's everyone doing? Good? Good? Yeah, good. That was cool. I need to connect in my house. I'm like trying to keep it away from my 4-year-old. I'm like, I gotta bring that in and get them using it. So Julian mentioned that I just finished writing my second book called Control-Alt-Delete. It'll be coming out next May, and what I wanted to do with you today is share a couple of stories that I'm gonna talk about in this book, because I think it's really relevant to the world you live in. And the reason why I think it's extremely relevant is because it wasn't too long ago that I had a small startup on St. Denis, and we had 2 other business partners at the time, I think 2 employees, maybe one of them was a chicken, I'm not sure. And we couldn't figure out how we were going to make people give a shit. We couldn't figure out, in a world where there were so many massive marketing agencies, and we were coming out with this idea of like bringing technology into advertising agencies, like what we would do to create noise. And my background was in publishing and writing and producing magazines, and I thought, well, there's this new thing called blogging, and there's this platform called Blogger, and I thought, well, maybe I'll start blogging, and I'll see how that works out for us as a way to sort of build some sort of social proofing or some credibility. And from there, it worked, which is great news. But as we evolved, we always tried to maintain, and even to this day, if you come and visit us, we're right here in McGill, this sort of spirit of being a startup. I think part of it is my travels to the Valley and seeing that sort of culture and just loving the energy. But the other part of it is because I think startups have a very unique position. And it's a position that the majority of brands can't really pursue. And what I've actually uncovered, and the stuff I talked about in my book, primarily are these 5 massive movements that have completely changed business forever, but the majority of bigger companies and organizations are simply not even touching. And the reason they're not touching them is because when I spend time with major marketers and major brands talking about where the world is at, what I've uncovered is that the majority of them really feel like they're in hell. If you sit down with them, you talk about marketing and communications and getting your message out there, they're like, between Facebook and Twitter and then now Pinterest, where did that come from? They're really used to sitting down with an agency, talking about an idea, having them execute that idea, and then having a media company do a bunch of buying. Spend a lot of money. You're probably very familiar with Fred Wilson. And Fred Wilson talks about how you shouldn't do marketing. Fred's wrong. Fred's talking about not doing advertising, not about not doing marketing. And that's part of the thing, right? There's a massive world of difference between advertising, paid advertising, and marketing. What you have to know out of the gates is that everything you do is primarily marketing. It's your product, your price, your placement, your promotion. Those are the 4 Ps. It's like marketing 101. But as a startup, you have to really embrace that. The most massive thing that you can do right now is embrace what I'll talk about. One of these movements is the idea of direct relationships. And so this is a huge thing. Brands and massive brands do not have a culture of creating a direct relationship with the consumer. They simply don't. The majority of brands sell through a retailer or they sell through a partner, and they don't really interface with the consumer at the ground level. And what we've seen in the past couple of years is this massive shift towards a direct relationship. And so when you're thinking about all the things you're doing as a startup and how you're going to move things forward, what I want you to really start embracing is this idea that you need to create direct relationships with your consumers. Now, you might think that's sort of obvious, right? Like you're on Twitter and you're connecting to them and you're tweeting back and forth, or people are liking you on Facebook, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a new world where there's actually this massive war happening in the world of direct relationships. And I'll give you a sort of visualization or a personal story that'll help you understand this a little bit. Let's say you're looking to buy a pair of headphones and you want to buy those Beats by Dre. Like for some reason you think you'll look cool wearing these ridiculous headphones, okay? And you buy these headphones and you go onto Facebook and you would see on Facebook that they've got, I think as of yesterday, it's somewhere about like 2 million or 4 million people who like them on Facebook. Whatever a like is, let's just call it a like, right? When you bought those headphones, though, you bought them where? Let's say you bought them at Target, as an example. You go onto Facebook, you'll see Target has about 15 million people who like them, right? All of these brands are in this massive race to get as many people as they can like them, thinking that they're actually developing direct relationships with them. But like, stop for a second and be that consumer who bought those headphones. Isn't that like a lot to ask of you? I mean, just think about what you sell and what you're trying to push into the market and how you're trying to connect to people. Is that a lot? I just bought a $150 pair of dorky headphones, right? You want me to like Beats, you want them to be in my newsfeed, you want me to like Target. I don't even know who to like at a certain point as a consumer. And so what you're starting to see is this massive, massive thing taking place that you really have to be aware of, because it's no longer you trying to get the direct relationship ahead of your competitor, but you're actually trying to get a relationship at the same time that your business partners and the people who are your allies are trying to get it as well. Because have you really thought about that? Like, it's crazy, right? And think about the consumer. What do I really need out of this relationship? What do I really need as a consumer to be engaged with your brand? Do I really have to like Target and Beats by Dre to have some sort of relationship over a pair of headphones I bought? And if you start thinking about it in that sort of complex, there's actually another part of that. It's like a bizarre love triangle. And the bizarre love triangle is who? Who's the third party in that? Well, it's Facebook, right? So as you are chasing these likes and going after them and racing with your competitors and your partners for all these people to like you and to follow you, suddenly you're also part of Facebook. I'd ask you, you're very smart people, you're all startups, so like you're very rugged. Who owns the direct relationship here? Beats by Dre, Target, or Facebook? Facebook, right? Now, you might think there's nothing wrong with that. I don't really necessarily have an issue with that either. I actually love Facebook. But think about the complexity of that one relationship with the consumer. And start thinking about what you're doing and what you're putting into the marketplace. And think about who should own that direct relationship. Now, if you're sitting here saying, so Mitch, who owns the direct relationship? If I was standing in front of Beats by Dre, I would tell them that they own the direct relationship. But if I was standing in front of Target, I'd tell them that they own the direct relationship. And if I was speaking in front of Facebook, I'd tell them that they own the direct relationship. And that's the truth. I mean, that is part of this massive, for lack of a better term, war that I call in terms of the pressures on consumers to understand brands. See, as all these brands, whether it's Facebook or whatever, get bigger and bigger, they're looking at monetization models. And the majority of the monetization models are fundamentally based on the fact of using your data and information, using your social graph to connect to it. But I want to parlay this idea of direct relationships into something that so profoundly affects your business in the most positive way that hopefully you'll sort of see how the worlds collide a little bit. Are you familiar with Kickstarter? Just raise your hands if you're familiar with Kickstarter. It's interesting. I would have presumed that the majority of people here are familiar with Kickstarter. You'd be surprised when I speak to corporate audiences how few people are actually aware of Kickstarter. Awesome, right? They won't screw it up, so they could leave it for people like us. There's an amazing little design, it's true, there's an amazing little design shop called CW&T. And CW&T is actually based off of a girl who's originally from Montreal, but she lives in Brooklyn, and she's got a partner. And her partner do a bunch of very interesting design things. They call them squishy things. They could be physical, but they're sometimes also digital and interaction-based. And as they design things, and if anyone here is a designer, designers are really hardcore about their gear. Mostly their gear is notebooks and pens, but they're hardcore about it. And there's this amazing pen that the majority of designers like using, and it's a Pilot pen, but you can only get it in Asia. So anyone who's in North America who's a designer and has friends going over to Asia, they always say, bring me back a box of these Pilot pens. They're really, really awesome. But they're cheap pens. They're like big pens. They're like 65 cents, and you can toss them. But they use them so much that they get worn down. And so these two designers in their little studio in Brooklyn actually started screwing around with some metal and metal stuff and building things, and they built this really cool tube for it. And what they would do is they take the ink part out of the pen, the plastic part, and they'd shove it into this cool metal tube, and they built a case for the metal tube that's like a square ruler, so they could leave it on their drafting table, and you could draw straight lines with it. Then you could put the pen in when you pulled it out, because it was metal, it made this really cool popping sound. It was really funky. And as a lot of their friends were coming over, they'd be looking at their drafting table saying, that's awesome, what is that? And when they found out there was a case for the pens that they all loved, they were like, oh, you got to make these for me. And so they started looking around thinking, like, what could we do to actually manufacture these pens? People are asking us for them a lot. Kickstarter. And so they created that video, and they went on Kickstarter, and they had their little pledge. You know how pledging works, right? You pledge like from $1 to whatever. They'll thank you on the website, or for $50, you'll get a pen. For $150, you'll get 2 pens, and on and on and on and on. And Kickstarter is, like, to me, probably the most, I was telling Julian this backstage, that I think Kickstarter is the most interesting thing I've seen on the internet since Google. That's sort of big in my world, at least. I thought it was just that awesome. And within a couple days, these guys did like $290,000 in sales. And you just sort of stop and marvel at this amazing world we live in, where you can have this idea and put it out there in a video and get not raising $280,000, you're selling $280,000 worth of pens in a matter of days. And if that doesn't blow your mind in this day and age, I don't know what does. And the reason why this is so profound is, what is this really about? Well, it's really about direct relationships, isn't it? It's about this small company, 2-person company in Brooklyn, design shop, able to create $280,000 worth of direct relationships within a matter of days. See, you're in a very, very precarious situation, because everybody in this room primarily has had an idea and is doing something about it. Right? I mean, you're startups, correct? So you had an idea, and you know, the majority of people, if I were to ask an audience to say, how many people in here had a great business idea? Everyone raised their hand, oh yeah. How many people did it? It's like, whoa. All the hands go down. You'll see maybe 1 or 2 hands in a general audience, people are like, I'm doing it. So let me ask you, how many people have had a business idea? Raise your hands. Keep your hands up. How many people are doing it? Keep your hands raised. Look around. You will never see in your lives an audience with that many people keeping their hands raised. You can drop them. Thanks very much. It's profound. It's amazingly profound. Now, why is it profound? The chasm between having your idea and bringing it to reality is 2 words: effing impossible. Right? I mean, the odds are minuscule. You know this going into it, but you believe in it, and so you're doing it. There's the chasm that exists between having a business idea and bringing it to market. Business planning, business ideation, business modeling, trying to convince a funder, VC angel, whatever, to give you money, creating the prototype, going to market, and then, dear Lord, please, Lord Jesus, let someone buy this thing. Let there be a market for this, right? Kickstarter fundamentally implodes the chasm. Because you know, within a couple of days, couple of hours, maybe even a month, who cares, if your idea is something that people will buy. Your ability to make that idea happen, and this is why I love Kickstarter so much, is your ability to create and foster those direct relationships, right? And so we live in a world where something like the Pebble Watch, are you familiar with Pebble Watch? So Pebble Watch comes out, it's an e-ink technology watch, and it's got a touch screen. Very, very cool watch. They put it on Kickstarter. The idea is that you could basically not look like a dick when you're in a meeting, so you could check your text messages by looking like you're just checking your watch. It's synced to your iPhone. You can sort of change, look at text messages, emails, manipulate the iPod functionality of it, et cetera, et cetera. And so this watch goes on to Kickstarter and becomes the biggest to date, the biggest Kickstarter project, doing over $10 million in sales in a couple of weeks. I mean, $10 million of selling watches. If you worked for Timex or Swatch, I would ask you if selling $10 million of watches would be a good day at the office, right? They didn't have distribution. They weren't in JCPenney. They weren't in the Bay. They put a video on to Kickstarter, and they leveraged the power of these direct relationships to build something profound in the world. And there are tons of stories. There's one playing out right now today, this one called Ouya, O-U-Y-A. This is an open source based on Android platform gaming console that you will plug into your TV, but it enables people who create games to just put games in front of people. You know, no offense to the Xbox people or PlayStation, but if you want to create a game for Xbox, it's not actually all that easy. You need SDKs that aren't easy to get licensing, you need to be a certain size, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as of this morning, this company in a couple days has raised $4.6 million in sales of product, real product, sold out the door. It's validating its business model and pushing it forward. These are the times of direct relationships. And so when you're thinking about what it takes to be a really profound marketer in this day and age, All you have to start thinking about is what can we do every single day, every single moment that we're around to actually build these direct relationships. And so if I leave here with one message, it's start thinking powerfully about the power of direct relationships. Now, let's switch over to what you can do from just a pure getting your word out there. I actually think that the world of advertising is extremely cluttered. I'm sure you feel it too, right? It's like you go into the bathroom. I was in an Italian restaurant the other day, went to go take a pee, and in the toilet, in the urinal, was a little soccer net with a ball that you pee on. It was like on a, and like you sort of like, you want to kick the ball with your pee stream, and like it was for an ad for like whatever it was, the World Cup or whatever. And I thought, really, like I can't even get a pee without being interrupted with advertising messages. And we all feel this, but the bigger thing here, I think, is not thinking about what you could do to interrupt your consumers. I think one of the next phases, and then this is one of my sort of core fundamental movements, is the ability for you to create utility. Start thinking right now as you move into the market about what utility you can create for your brand. And so I'll give you one quick example about this before I get kicked off stage, and it's probably my favorite example. And the reason I'm going to tell you this story is because I think there's a new real estate in town. The original real estate was real estate. I mean, if you were in a business, it was real estate, real estate, real estate. Where you put your store, where you put your business would be mitigated by your success. You need enough foot traffic, people who are like you, et cetera, et cetera. There's a reason people converge in Silicon Valley. There's a reason Walmart puts its stores where it does. They need foot traffic. Well, the new real estate, as you probably all know, is right here, right? It's the home screen of this thing. See, how many of you actually believe so much in your product that you think your consumers would keep it on the home screen of their iPhone each and every single day? A few of you might be brave and say it's me, but the majority of people, and the majority of big brands will say, no chance, couldn't do it. Why? Because we know the facts. We know that branded apps, 1/4 of them get downloaded, never used. 25% of them get downloaded, used once, never again, right? You've heard data like this. It's not true. What they're talking about are apps that suck, not apps. Right? We all use apps all the time that provide what utility to us. My favorite example of this is Charmin. Yes, toilet paper. Charmin has an app called Sit or Squat. And how Sit or Squat works is you download this app and you hit it, and wherever you are geographically, it'll tell you where the clean bathrooms are. And it's all based off of a wiki platform, and so you can add bathrooms, you can comment on them, you can rate them yourselves. If you've got kids, it tells you which ones have changing stations, very important. It tells you which ones are handicap accessible, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I travel a ton, and I can tell you that this app resides on the home screen of my iPhone. And I can also tell you that when I'm walking the aisles of Walmart, and normally you go down the toilet paper aisle, like Majesta, whatever, biggest one, cheapest, no. We buy Charmin exclusively in my family now. I've become extremely brand loyal to Charmin toilet paper. Why? Because they're providing me with a tremendous utility. They didn't do an app that says, hey, we got, buy 3, get 1 off, 20% off, oh, you happen to be in a Walmart. They don't do any of that junk. That's traditional mass marketing interruption models. You actually have this profound power now in a world where you can have an idea and put it out there in text, images, audio, and video instantly and for free to the world. You, as a brand, as a startup, can give the consumer the ability to create tremendous utility. So, direct relationships, utility, have a great brand narrative, have a story that you can really tell, and do magical things, and I promise you that you will have a company that succeeds beyond your wildest ideas and beyond your wildest dreams. So good luck, and I hope it works out for you, and I'll be around if you have any questions. Thank you.